Professor Lesley Seebeck, and Lesley is the chair of the National Institute of Strategic Resilience, and she's also the chief executive at Cyber 21. Lesley was also the former CIO at the Australian Bureau of Meteorology and former chief executive of the Australian National University Cyber Institute. Lesley, welcome.
Thank you.
Lesley, you're going to be speaking at Adapt Security Edge next month about dealing with the dark side of digital and data when working with boards, clients, and stakeholders. What do you mean when you say dark side?
I use the term dark side because cyber is very much the yin and yang of the digital and data systems which we use in everyday life. And people tend to approach it with fear, trepidation, and they have this real sense of impending danger and risk. And yes, it's in everything we do. And so we have to confront that dark side and learn to deal with it. And hence I say, let's deal with the dark side.
Absolutely. Now, the conversations that CIOs and CISOs need to be having with these groups around managing cyber risk, what are some of the conversations that perhaps they're not having right at the moment? Because the threat is really real. We had a couple of big attacks last year and one this year, but what are the conversations that they should be having that perhaps they're not?
So the problem is that we tend to leave it to the last moment until something happens. And it's the case of we need to do the 90% to be ready for that 90% of when the effort is really needed. If we don't do that preparation beforehand, we're going to be less prepared when things actually happen. And so those conversations that cyber and the cyber teams need to be in, and executives more generally need to engage in with cyber, is all the other stuff that happens in an organization. So it's not merely do we have secure data, it's everything around. Do we have the right budgeting framework? Are we recruiting the right people, and are we ensuring we have a sustainable business continuity plan? Are we getting the right people in? Are we training up people? And all those issues, which are the everyday work of organisations, and that's what we need to engage in.
Yeah, for sure. Now, currently, Lesley, you're working with the University of New South Wales. You're developing professional education courses around cyber, targeting key decision makers. Where do you think the gaps are in cyber knowledge across these groups that need to be filled?
So from personal experience, what ends up happening is that when these people are confronted with cyber, either when there's a crisis, and there's often increasingly better mechanisms for dealing with that, but in everyday situations, or even in those crises, they might have 15 minutes, they might have 30 minutes to get their head around what's actually happening. So what I'm trying to do is give them the frameworks to think about these questions and address these questions, and how they start framing them to actually dig down into making sure they get the right answers, and recognizing that this is a journey. It is not a single solution. It's not a single shot solution. There are no silver bullets here, and get them into that framework. So that's what these are approach. That's what the first one I'm looking at is all about, is that process of decision making.
Yeah, and how's it going so far?
Oh, well, the first one is up the 1st of November, so we'll see how we go there. So feel free to go to the UNSW Canberra website and sign on.
For sure, we'll do. Now, in 2015, you led the response to a cyber attack on the Bureau of Meteorology, initiated by foreign spies, of course, and that was in the media. I understand you can't talk about specifics around that, and we get that. But what are some of the broad lessons that you learned from that incident, things that you're going to be discussing at Security Edge?
So firstly, one of the things you learn, of course, and anyone who's dealt with these things, is that you don't know everything at once. So people sort of say, is this a cyber attack? Often you don't know. So there is information asymmetry involved here, and that happens over a long time. So it's a slow-moving thing. Things don't happen until they happen. The second thing is that it's around people, and that's going to be a major theme what I'm going to be talking about. So the decisions people make in terms of how they structure their systems is really important. How people budget the systems and make sure that resources are allocated is really important. And that goes not just to the CFO function of an organisation, it's also your colleagues, because you're out there competing with money inside a sort of framework all the time. It's about building that strong, high-performing team. It's about making sure you've got the right skills in your team and so on as well, because frankly, the technology is complicated. So never underestimate how difficult the technology can be. But it's around the people that make it happen. And last, there's the users. And when I talk about users, it's not merely the users inside the organizations, it's who's using your data. It's often the users that you don't think about, and we should be taking lessons from things such as robo-desk as well, to think about, are we transferring risk to those who cannot manage it? And if we are, how do we make sure they have, to look after their interests and so on as well? So it's that broader subset of users that we should be thinking about when we think about how we structure and design for cyber.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting you talk about robo-debt. There was a lot of risk there that was passed down the line, right? And that's what happened.
Oh, yes.
And we don't want that. We don't want that to happen again.
No, and one of the things, the other thing you learn about cyber, of course, is that when we talk about cyber, we just sort of think, oh, it's a technical thing. It is just about that information security. When you look at the definitions and you look at the legal definitions and all the responsibilities CISOs have on their shoulders, it's about personal security. It's about privacy. It's about things such as stalking, IP theft. It's about fraud. So there's a range of things that CISOs and their teams now bear frontline response and support for. And so the final thing I would say too is that CISOs need to look out for their teams. And that's both because that helps sustain the response, and a strong team will generate a strong response, but also people looking at them. If they see a team that is run down, that is stressed, they will then immediately think they can't cope. And that sort of has knock-on effects in the organization as well.